Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 279, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back. You play just $5 and are presented by Game Time. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I am Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, what is up?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. No shortage of things to talk about, which is nice. This is our first podcast of the Joe Sacco era. Local guy, Medford, not Melrose. People
Not Melrose. Don't say
need to
it.
realize that. There's a big difference.
Not Melrose, not Marblehead, Medford.
Medford. And I love his accent. He's got the GBL accent.
One of us.
He is one of us. And when I was at that opening presser for him on Wednesday, I was kind of thinking, I'm like, there are going to be a lot of Bruins fans who watch him and go, I like this guy. He's one of us. And I could easily see it. I mean, Bruce Cassidy, there was always that appeal. He grew up a Bruins fan. He understood it. Sacco obviously grew up a Bruins fan, but also grew up here. I mean, Butch was in Ottawa. Not that demeans you as a Bruins fan or anything, but growing up in the area is a sort of an added thing. And Sacco sort of has that. And I do wonder if, I don't think expectations are sky high for Sacco. I don't think, obviously, I think he'd like the interim tag removed at the end of the year. He'd like to, be the head coach going forward. But I don't think if things go wrong, I don't think fans are going to be sitting here going, Joe Sacco's the worst. He sucks. Like, I do think there's going to be a likability to him that people are going to really like him.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, like, Joe Sacco clearly wants the interim tag off, and if he gets that, that means that the Bruins have righted the ship and are playing better. But I'm not saying he's got house money, but I feel like if the Bruins continue to plummet, like if what we've seen the first 20 games is the norm, I don't think people are like, damn it, Joe Sacco, like he won't get the job. But I also feel like it's not, the issues would run far more than what Joe Sacco can do to turn around a team that, if this carries into the new year and beyond, is clearly bigger issues at hand in terms of roster construction, in terms of the players themselves who aren't stepping up. Like, again, like he doesn't have it made with, like, one, like the way the team is right now, and two, the expectations, what have you. But it's also not like this is he's coming in here being like, all right, like Bruins fans are looking at him as like the savior or anything like that. You hope that his presence and like the new voice and changing things up kind of is the kick in the ass this team needs. But I also, you hope that Bruins fans aren't also viewing him as the be all end all. Like, I think I mentioned this on Bruins Beat with you, Evan. Like, it's not Joe Sacco who's going to be burying the chances or not on the power play. He's not the one doing the DDD passes that are bouncing off of Jeremy Swayman. He's not the one who's losing puck battles along the boards. It's going to come down to the players, and they're going to be the ones that have to take the steps forward to right the ship here and get this team going in the right direction, because it's been few and far between in terms of the silver linings or the positives so far this year.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be Joe Sacco, unless he does like something egregious, unless he, benches David Pastrnak for games and games on end and like goes scorched earth, then maybe that's different. But I don't think, if the Bruins miss the playoffs at the end of the year, I mean, I don't think he's back, but I also don't think it's his fault. I think it's very clear that is his fault. I do think it is a little awkward because, like, if they get to the end of the year, they don't make the playoffs, they decide to move on from Sacco, they can't really move him back to be associate head coach. Like, you're just like, all right, man, like, thanks for the years you gave us. We'll see ya. Like, find another job, which that also is tough for him stability wise. He did have a good thing going. Now, obviously, if they waited to the end of the year to fire Montgomery, maybe they fire the entire staff. So,
I think if this team doesn't make the playoffs, there's going to be a lot more sizable changes all across the roster, the coaching staff, management. So I don't think that's something that Joe Sacco has to fret about if they don't make the playoffs, of like, whoa, I guess I'm back to it. No, I think like a lot's going to be overhauled if this team doesn't make the playoffs. Team with the expectations they had going into the year.
100%. And it sort of begs the question of like, what's going to be different with Joe Sacco? And the impression that I got from Wednesday, and the big thing that he kept mentioning was work ethic, compete. And he's right. Those are what need to change. I don't think you're going to see stylistic changes, Thursday night. I don't think you're going to see different systems implemented like this weekend. I think if there's anything that happens, it's going to be long term. He talked about that sort of with, Chris Kelly handling the power play and him handling the penalty kill. Like I don't think that's going to change immediately. 2 months from now, I think maybe you will start to see some changes, maybe in how they handle D zone stuff, how they handle the puck in the offensive zone. But I think it does come down, and it sounds simplistic, but this team has not competed. I mean, they've not, Sweeney kept mentioning it. They've not been a hard out, and he's right. So I think for me, the difference in approach is probably going to be the compete.
Yeah, it seems like that was kind of his main messages. One, just simplifying things, and two, just ramping up the intensity and the work ethic and stuff like that. And that doesn't sound flashy, doesn't sound all that exciting, right? It's not like, I remember when the Bruins got rid of Claude Julien and Bruce Cassidy comes in. His first practice was like night and day from Julien's. Like it was like super fast paced. And like you saw right away, Cassidy had kind of like a vision for that team to unlock more offense and be more dynamic. And I think adjust to the way the NHL was going. I don't think you're seeing any sweeping changes like that from Sacco, at least especially out of the gate. I think you saw on Wednesday in his first practice is a lot, higher intensity, a lot more, fast pace. And I think it comes down to what Charlie Coyle mentioned on Monday after that loss of like, wasn't happy with the effort in practice, and that bleeds into the games. I think for the Bruins, it's like, if you're just looking for a hard reset and the way they've been so sluggish and in this extended malaise, I think that is kind of the first step. It's just like simplify, skate hard, and keep things simple and ramp up the intensity and the work ethic. And
simplify and skate hard is an awesome
yeah. I mean, I think that has to be the first step before you start looking at overhauling, the structure of your power play of like, all right, we're gonna put, Marchand up at the point or anything. Like before you start doing that, I think it all comes down to being simple. And Sacco also mentioned that with like before they start looking at changing like their approach offensively, like let's get back to what we know what we can do, which is we can protect the net and take pride in that. Like he mentioned that, like it's all these things that should sound simple, should be things that you would think would be a given when you look at the personnel on this team, the identity of what this team has been for years. It hasn't been the case right now. So I think that is at least a step in the right direction in terms of, I think that's the main message out of the gate is not breaking all the things down and starting from scratch. It's like, hey, let's get our shit in order, do what we know we've done, and let the results kind of build off of that moving forward. So I think that's a step in the right direction. Sacco also mentioned on Thursday after morning skate, like that they might eventually tweak their approach offensively in terms of maybe being more quantity over quality. Not saying they're just going to be like they're going to cross the blue line, just firing a shot, but kind of more
5 guys right to the front of the net.
But kind of a little bit more of how Cassidy did. And I think when you look at this team where one thing we've seen, and it reared its head last year and it's been even worse this year, it's just the finishing talent is not there. If you're going to be kind of skating against the tide in terms of being able to bury these chances, maybe it is just get every puck on net, kind of like a team like the Hurricanes, and generate rebounds, generate tips, get your D-core firing into shooting lanes, and kind of get just a couple of greasy goals that way. Again, it's not, you can view how the Bruins approach things with Montgomery with quality over quantity as being the safer option in terms of generating quality looks. But when you're struggling this much offensively and you don't have the personnel maybe to bury these looks with some regularity, just I think maybe peppering the net is the way to go right now. It's not reinventing the wheel, but it's pretty simple hockey. I think right now that's what the Bruins need to do because you have not seen that at all the way this year's gone so far.
Yeah, and I think some of the things he mentioned Thursday of, bigger guys getting to the net front, like that comes down to compete. Like you have the guys to do that. It's just, do you want it or not? Like, and I think that's sort of the biggest thing for me is, and I actually agree with Sacco on this of, the compete, the work ethic just hasn't been there at all. And that's what has to change. Now, how do you get that out of them? I don't know. I mean, you mentioned it on Bruins Beat on Tuesday. That Columbus game, the Dallas game, they look like a team who and I'm not saying that they did, but they look like a team who wanted their coach to be fired. Like,
yeah.
I know some of them, on Wednesday, McAvoy and Marchand, Pastrnak. Obviously sad that Montgomery got let go, but like McAvoy was asked, did you feel like something was coming? And he's like, well, it kind of did. And it's like, no, man, like, how did you not see that a 5-1 loss to the worst team in hockey with 2 shorthanded goals against, like, that's going to get a coach fired.
Yeah.
So I think Sacco has the correct approach there. We'll see. I mean, again, if they're not pulling out of this funk in the next couple weeks, you're going to have to make some big stylistic changes as soon as possible to try to get them out of that malaise. I want to get into some Sweeney comments. I also want to get into what Elliot Friedman wrote on Thursday in 32 Thoughts. But first, Prize Picks. It is Prize Picks time, everybody. It's the best place to get real money sports action. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And Prize Picks, they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Anytime I have a good matchup on Prize Picks, I like my money, and they get it to me quickly, which is awesome. And again, Joe Sacco is in now, Connor. Joe Sacco's in. So if you're feeling a little burst, if you're like, David Pastrnak starting to feel better after, injuries over the summer, maybe more than 0.5 goals in a single game. And Brad Marchand, maybe you're thinking, a little spark. He's the leader. Maybe more than 0.5 points. Maybe that's what you're looking for.
Okay.
So go to Prize Picks for that. Go for it. I know people were very negative on what things you would take with the Bruins in the live show we did on Tuesday. Maybe you want to do that too. Maybe you're like, you know what? David Pastrnak's not scoring at all. We're going to take less than 0.5 goals. And you know what? That's your right. That's your right. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app, use code CLNS, get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Run your game.
Run your game is right. So why don't we start with the Elliot Friedman news? Because it kind of ties hand in hand. Don Sweeney mentioned on Wednesday that they, Montgomery and Sweeney kind of talked extension over the summer. There were offers. Montgomery said no. And Friedman writes that Sweeney confirmed that, but maybe we will never know the full story. But there are people who believe Montgomery was unsure about Boston even before Boston was unsure about him. Now, again, that's Montgomery's camp, probably talking to Friedman about that, trying to get both sides of the story out there. I go back to like maybe Montgomery wasn't high on Boston. I go back to like they went into the year with a coach without a contract. Like I continue to go back to that of that's not normal, especially for a guy who has a 700 winning percentage. Like there's got to be a reason, whether it's the postseason, whether it's stuff that we don't know and maybe we'll never know internally. Like there was a reason or multiple that they were not high on him enough, whether they lowballed him in the summer or just were not adamant about getting a deal done. Like clearly like something was up.
Yeah. I mean, if you're the Bruins, how can you not go into a new year thinking that this wasn't going to be a narrative? Like, I think they're well aware of what was going to be discussed. Like, I mean, you were bringing it up in interviews or in press conferences even before the Bruins plummeted. Like, because again, this was going to be a storyline. It's not often you have a coach with that record, go into a year as a lame duck without there obviously being questions from management as to like, are we sold on this guy? Right. And again, like whether that's the way like the last 2 playoffs have gone and concerns there or what have you, it's clear that like something was up as to why they didn't cross the finish line in terms of, working out an extension. Like maybe some of it's also from Montgomery's camp, but if you're the Bruins, you're going in well aware that like this is going to linger and it's going to ramp up the pressure on the coach going into the season where he's a lame duck in a lame duck spot with his contract. So, like I could see why from like Montgomery's camp that maybe he wasn't sold on the long-term outlook of the Bruins and didn't want to commit to that, but it does feel like from the Bruins management perspective, you know what the storyline was going to be. You knew what the narrative was going to be as soon as regular season started. That even if this team wasn't 8-9-3, but they were, even just a little bit better, we'd still have those questions. The Bruins going to be, 20, maybe if they're, 14-1-1 out of the gate like they were the last couple of years, maybe the contract gets signed then. But to go in with that much uncertainty, I think it says more about the Bruins management and their thoughts on committing or, obviously not committing to Montgomery long term, as opposed to, what the back and forth was in terms of, contract talks or anything like that.
So yeah, I mean, you're right about that stuff, and I think it's interesting some of the things Sweeney mentioned in that press conference. There's certainly a lot to take away. The number one thing was he was not happy about training camp. And again, I think the whole organization, McAvoy, Marchand, Pasternak, Sweeney, no one could, I think it was kind of a culmination of everything that training camp wasn't as great as they wanted it to. I mean, Marchand missed the beginning of it. He was nursing, after surgeries. Pasternak had suffered an injury over the summer. The Swayman stuff, Montgomery's stuff, like they weren't ready to go. Clearly, first period against Florida, we could see it, and they have not looked ready at all this season. So I found the camp thing interesting, and I think Sweeney kind of put that on Montgomery a little bit in terms of, hey, you're the head coach. Like that was sort of a first bad sign. So to me, I think the camp thing was the biggest.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you look at it right, and obviously Jim Montgomery's not here anymore, so you're going to hear from Sweeney like mentioning like the how inconsistent they were was an issue, and even like that Dallas game where a couple of bad calls go their way. And Sweeney references this game in particular. A couple of calls don't go their way. They still end the first period down 2-1, get a goal late from Coyle. You feel good about where you are. A lot hasn't gone right. But then second period comes around, 3 quick goals in like, what was it, like 4 minutes, right? Game gets away from you. Like you can't have those kind of situations. And, maybe some of that falls on the coach. But also I think like a lot of Sweeney's press conference on Wednesday revolved more around like the players being like, what the shit, guys? Like,
Yep.
and again, like we can, and I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments being like, it's gotta be what Sweeney's doing. What are you guys talking about? We know.
It's all
like,
I've gotten in the past couple days.
Yes.
Yes.
But obviously, I don't think Sweeney's going to go up there and be like, "Yeah, this roster I built sucks."
Yeah, what do you expect?
It'd be wild if he did do that. But I do think, like, again, it's the old adage we hear whenever a coach gets fired in any of the sports: you can't fire the players, you can't trade 8 guys in one sitting. So I think for Sweeney, it's more of like, this is the move I had to play. Pretty much the only move right now I can do. But like, yeah, do you want me to rattle off the 10 guys who are playing like shit? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like, and again, you can point to training camp and all those things, but I think for Sweeney, it's was kind of like putting a lot more of the onus, I think, on the players of not stepping up, not being focused, not executing basic plays, not being poised in critical situations. And again, like, does that mean that he is absolved from the blame? No, of course not. Like, we're not saying that. But I think also when you look at like what Sweeney is going to talk about in the midst of firing a coach, like after like Cassidy got fired, it was like input from players. We think a new voice needed to be added to the room, all that stuff. Very much Cassidy, it was time to go. This one's like the results weren't there with Montgomery, but look at all these guys that I wish I had an answer as to why 10, 11, 12 guys aren't, living up to their expectations. He mentions training camp. He mentions like that maybe some players were comfortable because they had careers and thought that was just going to be the norm, which I think the Bruins built a roster anticipating that, but also it's one thing I think if you're a team dealing with the cap to expect that. Another thing for the players themselves to be like, yeah, he's right. Like I can just waltz back into
I can coast to like 50
into a 20
easy.
goal season. So again, that's not absolving the guys who built the roster. We're not saying that, but I think when you look at the tone and where Sweeney was, targeting where this team has been so disappointing, I think a lot of it's on a wide, assortment of players on the roster that aren't pulling their weight. And I don't know, I don't really disagree with them. Like, you can't fire the roster, but I've watched 20 games of uninspiring, boring hockey in which the team is, handling pucks like hand grenades. Like, there's been multiple games where all of us up in the media watching them from up top are like, what the hell is going, like, there's plays where you're just shaking your head as to, like, we're not asking them to, I think Montgomery or Sweeney are asking them to be like a 70s Soviet team with all these flashy passes or these great breakouts or anything like that. You're not asking them to be the Florida Panthers. Like, we're asking for D-to-D passes, breakout passes, stuff like that. That should be the norm that they are playing hot potato with. Like, I think for Sweeney, it's like, I wish I had an answer, but look across what we have right now.
I also like the other thing is, you and I were high on this roster coming into the year. So far, we've been proven incorrect.
I'm just gonna burn. I'm gonna burn my bold predictions. I think I had Montgomery signs in January. Lindholm has 70 points. It's gonna at some point we'll have to run through them again because even if this team rebounds, it's going to be way off from where
way off, which is fun. I mean, it's part of the deal. But again, I go back to, you can think whatever you want about this roster. You can think it's underwhelming. You could have in the preseason said this team is not making the playoffs. This is a shitty roster. Nobody. I don't care. People are going to tweet at us and say that they thought this, but I can tell you they didn't. No one thought that all of Geeky, Frederick, Coyle, Zaka, Lindholm, Pasternak, Marchand, throw like Max Jones in there, Charlie McAvoy. No one thought that they would all play at their worst at the same time.
Yes.
Even throw Swayman in there. Like, I know he missed camp, but like, you didn't expect the 10, 11, 12 guys I just mentioned to all stink at the same time. You didn't. And that's what's happened. And so again, I see the stuff like the roster stinks. Okay, you can think it stinks, but no one thought it would be to this extent. To this extent where look at the stats. Look at the points. I mean, I think it was Cole Koepke hasn't had a point in like 10 games or whatever, and he's still like the fourth highest scoring forward on the team. It's incredible. Like that again, and that's to me, like I was on Adam Kaufman had me on his radio show on Wednesday night, and he mentioned he's like, the Bruins to make the playoffs right now are like plus 105. Would you take that? And I said, well, obviously things stink right now, and it's a bad time to take it. It's a stock you're buying at its lowest. But you want to look at the flip side, and it's like, well, they are in contention, and they are playing at their worst.
Rest of the East sucks.
Rest of the East is bad, especially the Atlantic. And if I'm not saying this is going to happen, and I sound like I have Bruins rose-colored glasses on, but like, if 5 of those 10 guys start to play closer to what they can, like, they're going to win games. And if the rest of the East stinks the way that it does, like, would it shock you if they're the 3rd seed in the Atlantic? No. Would it shock you if they're a wild card? No, it wouldn't shock me at all. Like, at some point, Swayman is going to level out. He's going to get back to normal. Pasternak will be more, in shape and all that stuff. I'm not saying he's out of shape, but in game shape because, the injuries and things like that. So, like, it wouldn't shock me if they turn this around. I'm not confident in that. I'm not willing to put lots of money down on that, but I do think there is that other side. But something that I am always willing to spend money on. Our friends at Game Time, because there's nothing like watching an NBA or an NHL game live. The energy in the building, the sounds on the ice or the court, the memories you make with family, friends, and other fans. It's unmatched. Coolest part, strangers sitting around you become your best friends by the middle of the 3rd period. And you can make
enemies.
These memories. Or enemies. But you know what? It's worth the money too. You get your aggression out, your anger out.
Yep.
But you can make those memories with Game Time. You can make them with Game Time because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. When I use Game Time, I also love the flash deals, which help me get discounted prices on damn good seats. Plus, who doesn't love seat views, which give a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy? So, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, Create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Connor, what time is it?
Game time.
It's game time. Bane says that it is game time. So Sweeney's reaction was pinning it obviously a lot on the players. Guys, come on, get it together. From the players themselves, I mean, I think they said all the right things. I'm not going to believe any of that until I see it. And that was my biggest takeaway. It was like, okay, like you're saying the right stuff. And they have been saying the right stuff this year. It's not like they're making excuses. It's not like they're in there like, oh, well, you know, this and that. Like, that's how they said. I guess that's how they would sound if they were to make excuses. They haven't really been. But they also haven't been backing up what they've been saying. I did find it interesting, though, McAvoy mentioning that they sort of lost the joy. They sort of lost it over the last 20 games or so. It's been sort of the culmination of a lot of things. I do wonder how easy it is to come out of that.
Yeah, no, I do think that's something where it's whether it's, you know, it was mentioned, I think, from Friedman and a couple other like established financial insiders that, you know, whether it's hurt feelings still from the Swayman talks, and that's not like hurt feelings from Swayman to the Bruins, but also like coming in late, you know, missing training camp. Is there like, you know, that dynamic of some players being like, where are you, buddy? Like, we kind of needed you, like, which is, I think, natural to expect. There is going to be some of that consternation, or however you want to say it, right, for where these guys are. You know, maybe it's just guys need to air things out or get over it and focus on the task at hand, because
Need an intervention.
yeah, like, you know, and maybe bringing in Sacco and getting back to basics and stuff is just kind of the hard reset this team needs to get rolling here. Again, this is a Bruins franchise that has been talked about for years in terms of its culture and accountability and all that stuff. But, you know, you're having guys say the right things, but as you said, it's not going to mean anything if you're not showing it on the ice. Like a couple of games ago when they were in Dallas and that was an awful game, 7-2 final, like Zadorov spoke to the media and was like, yeah, it's unacceptable. We're getting outskated. We're getting, you know, we're making it way too easy for the opponent. It's what you want to hear, but also it's a guy that is committing those flaws, that is building towards where the Bruins are in terms of their lackluster play. So yeah, you can say all the right things, and it's better that they're saying the right things as opposed to like, well, check in March and see where we are or anything like that. Like, no, it's not something like that. But I do think for the players, it's not going to mean anything. You know, they feel guilty about Montgomery. Well, if you handle the puck like a hand grenade, then you wouldn't have, like, if you did that, then he would probably still be here. So you can say all the right things, but until you start building your game and start moving in the right direction, and you have a great opportunity right now with the way the schedule is, a lot of home games, a lot of matchups against teams like Utah, Detroit, you know, games
Pittsburgh.
games that you should win, or you should be favored to win. This is your opportunity right now to, again, even if they're beating a couple of tomato cans, like, if all it takes is 3-4 wins in a row and you're feeling better about your game and you start building those good habits, again, what I said earlier, this team has not had a lot of silver linings or positives to lean on in a lot of these games. This is their opportunity, but it's going to fall on the players themselves to go out there and execute. And remains to be seen.
It does, and you need like a 7-1 win. You need, or you know, even just a win.
I'll take a 3-0 win. I'll take a 3-1 win.
Or that. You take that, but like you need a good, like, just demolishing the other team. And I don't mean like hits. I mean like offense is firing. It's a 60-minute effort. Like that's what they need, and they have not had one this year at all. So yeah, I mean, reaction from players, you know, and again, like the culture's being tested. Like this is a massive test for guys like McAvoy and Pastrnak. How do you respond in a moment like this? I mean, I think everyone kind of agrees those might be the two potential future captains. How do you respond to this kind of adversity? Can't always be fun. Can't always be winning. Can't always be 22-23. Like they're going through stuff right now. How do you pull yourself out of it? How do you respond to this? So again, I you know, people can sit there and say, oh my God, the roster sucks. Sweeney needs to be fired. Neely needs to be fired. Well, Sweeney and Neely are not the ones that are going to be fired through all of this. They aren't, unless they start missing the playoffs consistently. They're not getting canned. So these players they have to be the ones to perform, or else it's going to be a really crappy winter here in Boston. Connor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read all my stuff over at theglobeandboston.com. We have covered every step of the way this season with recaps, features, columns, breakdowns, all that good stuff. So you can read all of it over on those two sites. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called, you can at ConnorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Connor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Poke the Bear listeners. Have a great rest of your week.